begin the session with the recitation of the verses of Holy Quran. Please welcome him with a loud salam.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بتقواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Without further ado, I'd like to request our honorable guest and respected speaker, Dr. Hasnain Walji, and request all of you to please welcome him with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والحمد لله الذي جعلني من أمتي سيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين ياسين أحمد محمود أبو القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد من المحبين وإترة التاحلين. أما بعد، قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. We need to continue with our theme on empowerment and unlocking human potential. The ayah karima that I had the blessing of reciting, translated, says that help cooperate with one another in taqwa and in birr, in piety and in goodness. And do not support each other in ism and udwan, meaning sin and aggression. This becomes a philosophy, and in corporate America, we actually call it a mission statement. Every corporation has a mission statement. To me, when we live in a society where we are trying to be good citizens of that society, then there needs to be a mission statement for people like us to live in that society. And to me, the Quran guides us, saying help, cooperate with each other or one another in goodness and piety, and not help one another in sin and aggression. And inshallah, we will continue elaborating on societal responsibilities that we have in the light of this particular verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 2. Just to recap, yesterday we talked about the power of intentional building. Everything begins with a niyyah. Our prayer, our salat is not valid unless you make a conscious niyyah. You may not have to say the words, but unless you make a conscious niyyah, a conscious intention that I am now standing in front of my Maker for 3 rakats of Maghrib, qurbatan ila Allah in my heart, the prayer becomes valid. Otherwise, that prayer, it will not be valid. By the way, when you talk about prayer's validity and not invalidity of a prayer, understand one thing. Because sometimes we tend to be so high and mighty. A prayer being valid does not mean that that prayer is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only He knows, and we will find out on the day of judgment which of my prayers was really accepted. The validity of a prayer is one thing according to the fatwa of whichever mujtahid one may be following. But when it comes to the acceptance, that is a different thing. And we cannot be the judges of that ourselves. It will be He who will judge us on that day. So, to come back, niyyah is something that can be used, yesterday we said, to change behavior. I say Salamun Alaikum with the right niyyah to you. It is impossible then that if I say peace be upon you, that any harm can ever come from me to you. I will not backbite, I will not speak behind your back, I will not harm you. In fact, I will help you because now I have said peace be upon you, my brother and my sister. And then we also yesterday talked about choices. That choices that we make today have consequences. I made a choice at the age of 40 to do whatever. I am 70 years of age today. That choice that I made at the age of 40 has those consequences today. Each one of us, we have to go through, whether you are 10 years old or 80 years old. Choices have consequences. And this is what we talked about yesterday. In fact, I stopped there because I wanted to share something with you in terms of the astonishing power that choice can give us. We have a choice to build or to destroy. We have the power and the choice to listen or to ignore. We have the choice and the power to encourage or discourage. We have the power to reach out or to turn away. Imam Hussain said, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. I have a choice to say, Labbaik, Ya Hussain, Labbaik. I will follow your footsteps. Or I have a choice to turn away. After the 12 days are over, I have suddenly become a good Muslim. And after the 12 days, I go back to my merry way. No change in me until I come back here next month. So we have a choice to reach out or to turn away. We have a choice to compliment or to criticize. The art of feedback, emotional intelligence. We will be talking about that in the days to come. But we have a choice to compliment somebody or to criticize. We have the choice and the power to act or to stand still. It's those choices and many others that I make today and now, or in the future, or that I made in the past, have consequences on my journey of my life. And sometimes I look back and say, I wish I had done X, Y, Z when I was 21 years of age. Now I am 72, I cannot turn the clock back. But the least I can do is share that experience with another 21-year-old and say, don't do what I did. You may be a better person, you may have a better future than I do. This is the meaning of choice. Your choices decide who you are each and every day. The clothes that you wear, the way you carry yourself, the language that you use, everything is a choice. You can choose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us that power to be able to choose. And therefore, the idea is to choose wisely. In the context of what we are discussing today, there was a difference between the niyyah of Yazid and Imam Hasnain. Normally it is understood that Imam Hussein refused to give bay'ah to Yazid. Yes, in general, that statement is true. That Imam Hussein refused to give bay'ah, to give allegiance to Yazid. But you know, the actual words of Imam Hussein al-Islam were not that. What he said was, mithli la yubayu mithlahu, meaning that someone like me, who is utterly submissive to Allah, cannot give his hand to someone like him, meaning Yazid, who is an open sinner. So it is not a one-to-one thing between Imam Hussein and Yazid only. It was between every person who is submissive to Allah and somebody who is not submissive to Allah. And that is a message that we take. That is our moral compass. Karbala gives us, our faith gives us a moral compass to follow. This very statement of 3 words of Imam Hussein al-Islam gives us a moral compass for our entire life, so that when we make those choices, we make the right choice. And therefore, he said, anyone like me, and Yazid, like him. And this statement, as I said, is not a personal statement. It is a universal lesson of all times and all places. Good and evil will always be on different sides. Truth and falsehood will be on the opposite side. Sometimes we get carried away. As I said, that falsehood and lies, especially in this day and age of alternative facts and all this social media, that falsehood will have run round the whole block while truth is still putting its shoes on. This is how fast a falsehood travels. It goes viral instantly if there is a falsehood. Something nice that is being said, something truthful that is being said, takes time for it to go viral if it ever does. But a falsehood will go viral. And therefore, we need to ensure that we make those choices, because as human beings, we have been blessed with that moral maturity. It is our innate fitrah, it is our instinct to choose between wrong and right. I said this yesterday, that it is your nafs al-lawama, it is your self-blaming soul that will tell you to distinguish between right and wrong. As you go through, the nafs al-lawama, the self-blaming soul within us, continues to become lower and lower. The nafs amara that we have becomes louder and louder, and we go towards our animalistic tendencies rather than promoting our human tendencies. So, to distinguish between right and wrong, and the ability to choose the right has been given to us. It is circumstances that make us, or make our conscience so weak and so blunted that sometimes we cannot distinguish as to which choice to make. And this is where I come to the subject today, with that introduction. That in order to evaluate, in order to choose right, one needs to have a level of critical thinking. And that is what I will spend some time on today. Because yesterday we talked about the power of intentional living. Today we need to talk about the need for critical thinking. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll talk about qalb salim, for tranquility, and move on with the rest of the lectures. So allow me to begin with the words of the Blessed Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I could not find a better definition of faith. I could not find a better definition of saying who is a believer than what we are reading right now. And the Blessed Prophet said that if doing right pleases and doing wrong displeases you, then you are truly a believer. There are no long theological discussions here about faith. This was direct by the Blessed Prophet. If your heart, if you are pleased when you do something good, something right, then you are a believer. If doing something wrong displeases you, meaning your nafs al-lawama is still active, then you are a believer. Because your fitra is telling you that what I'm doing is not right, it's not pleasing me, it's displeasing me. And these are the words of the Blessed Prophet, to say, here is the definition of a believer. If it's the opposite, then I don't want to hazard a guess as to who we are. Well, as we had promised, that we will also delve into one of the most critical situations that we are going through as a society around the world, in terms of mental health. And while this is not a medical or a healthcare lecture, as mu'mineen, as believers, we must be cognizant of the challenges that we are facing and be learned about the theological lens that we can look through in order to give us solace, in order to be able to deal and address the challenges of mental health that prevails in this country. So here is a theological lens that I want to present, and I crave your attention. That mental health is directly related to an individual's ability to remain on the path of the pleasure of our Creator. This is a theological lens. This is what mental wellness means. That if I am successfully able to remain on the path that Allah has set for me, that is mental wellness. If it's otherwise, then it is mental illness. This distinction and this choice needs to be made, because mental health and the issues that surround it affect our emotional, psychological, and our social well-being. How we think, how we feel, and how we act will allow us to remain on what I call the path of pleasure. The path of not my personal pleasure, the path of His pleasure. The path of Allah's pleasure. And when Allah's pleasure becomes my pleasure, then I move from that nafs al-amara through nafs al-lawama to nafs al-mutmainna, and as Allah have taught us, to actually move even further in terms of nafs al-radiyah and nafs al-radiyah. These are the stages of the nafs. I'm not going into a discussion on the theology of the nufus, but at least we need to understand that there is a path. And when our pleasure becomes Allah's pleasure, that's a much higher level. Like Imam Ali said, that Ya Ali, Imam Ali said, Ya Allah, you are exactly as I want you to be. Please make me exactly as what you want me to be. Such profound words. So this is the part of His pleasure that we are talking about. Well, mental health is complex. Mental wellness is complex. It has physical health. You have emotional health. Physical health means diet and exercise, regular checkups, making sure that you're looking after yourself. Emotional health, our thoughts, are they positive? Are they realistic? Are they pragmatic? Are they functional? Are they helping us in terms of completing our day-to-day goals, and so on and so forth. And then you also have the social health. What is my social circle like? How do I come across with colleagues? What do I do with family? What do I do with friends? What is my behavior when I'm in company? And then, of course, we're talking about spiritual health that we just discussed. When all these areas are balanced and they are working in harmony, there is a synchronism that happens between the physical and the emotional and the social and the spiritual. Is that when you attain that equilibrium, inshallah, we will talk about that equilibrium tomorrow when we discuss the idea of Qalb Salim, that it is a heart which is a heart at rest, it is a heart that is free of malice, and so on and so forth. This is when we come to a level of mental wellness. There are many practitioners, and I said this yesterday, and I repeat, if you feel that someone in your family or yourself, if you need help, do not self-treat. This is a serious matter. You must get help. You must get professional help. But what we can do is at least empower ourselves to understand what makes us take in the way that we do. And if we find that there is a level where we don't have that equilibrium, if there is one part that is somehow weaker than the other, then we need to address it. Sometimes we can address it, like physical health. In terms of diet and exercise, I can do something. But if I have a serious illness, physical illness, I need to get medical help. And so on and so forth, in terms of emotional health, social health. So, faith value is one of the most important parts of having that equilibrium in us. Because it is imperative, as I said before, the choices that I make, the idea of decision making, relationship building, the entire social network, the emotional intelligence in the way that I deal with people, the way I give feedback, the way I criticize or not criticize, and then resolving those moral and ethical dilemmas that I have. As we quoted the Blessed Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that in doing good pleases you and doing bad displeases you, you are now resolving, or you are empowered to resolve your moral and ethical dilemmas yourself. I looked at some research a while ago. 90% of people surveyed in this particular research, and if anyone wants to look it up, I can send you the references. I've got the reference here. 90% of the people surveyed who had issues with mental health said they were able to cope through prayer and turn into religion. It's not about Muslims only. It's about all people of faith. 80% of those who had the issues with mental illness, people who were studied, saying that they were using religious coping. Mu'min, the treasure of the du'as of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is a treasure that we sometimes totally underestimate. The entire idea of truly imbibing the words of Aimah alayhi salam gives us such solace if only we were to believe in that solace. As I said, I'm cautioning again, mental health is not to be taken lightly. Let us not downplay the role of religion and spirituality in mental health. It's not all about mechanical. It's not all about counseling, just a counseling. There are many methodologies that the professionals use in terms of addressing and dealing with mental health. But we cannot negate or downplay the role of religion and spirituality in mental health. At the same time, this is a balance that we need to achieve, that we should not attribute tendencies of mental illnesses exclusively to low faith and lack of religiosity. We become so judgmental sometimes. Well, because someone so and so is not religious, they're facing this. If only they were religious, they would be able to do this. Let us not attribute this. Let there be balance. That we have our faith to empower us. At the same time, we have the healthcare professionals here to help us. They both need to work in tandem so that we are able to address the challenges that we have. Enough about mental health today, inshallah. We will go into some further detail when we talk about Al-Salim and the role of the heart. Today, I would like to delve into why do we require critical thinking. Once again, I quote the Blessed Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he said, and please imbibe this message. Read, because these words are potent words. These are not words of a mere mortal. These are the words of our Prophet. He said, I am not anxious about the incursion of poverty amongst my community. That I am not worried about the incursion of poverty. That about which I am afraid for them is crooked thinking, warped thinking. The Blessed Prophet was able to visualize as to how warped thinking would actually filter into the community. And then he said further that which the poverty of thought, the paucity of thought leadership will bring to my community is much worse than that which economic poverty will bring. Yes, we have economic challenges, but the bigger challenge is the poverty of thought. The lack of critical thinking within the community is going to take them towards crooked and warped thinking, and this is something that we need to guard against. Just to lighten this, and I know that it's, late evening, and we're here, that Jibreel comes to Nabi Adam, and he brings him 3 gifts. Brings him the gift of Aql, intellect, brings him the gift of Iman, faith, and brings him the gift of Haya, morality. And he says, choose one. Jibreel says to Adam, choose one. And Nabi Adam chose Aql. He chose intellect. As Jibreel was going back, both Iman and Haya, faith and morality, said, we cannot go with you because where there is Aql, there is faith and morality. These go hand in hand. And therefore, this is where we are, the idea of intellect. And Imam Ali al-Islam has said, and again, this is something worth pondering upon, when he is describing the differences between the angels, the humans, and the animals. And Imam has said that God has characterized, given the angels just intellect and no desire or anger, no power of desire or anger. All they have is aql, they have intellect. And animals have been given both anger and desire, but without intellect. So you have the angel with aql only. You have the animals with desire and anger, the power of anger, the power of desire. And if you're interested to go deeper into this, read a book called Jamil Sadat by Sheikh Naraki, one of the foremost teachers of akhlaqiyat, and look at how he has juxtapositioned every one of the faculties of the human being in terms of our dispositions and the akhlaq that we have. Mu'minin akhlaq does not mean that I say Bismillah before I start eating. Akhlaq is not merely saying Salamun Alaikum. Akhlaq is the entire disposition of a human being as to how he conducts himself, and the quicker that human being is able to understand what makes him or her tick. And Sheikh Naraki has given a brilliant exposition. And this is actually based on what Imam Ali has said. So the angels have intellect, the animals have anger and desire, but they have no reason. And then Imam says that he exalted man by bestowing upon him all these 3 qualities. Intellect, anger, and desire. Now when I say anger, it does not mean anger in the normal sense. It is the power of anger. It's Khoei ghadabiyya, which is how it is termed. It is Khoei shahawiyya. If we did not have the power of anger, we would not be able to protect ourselves. If we did not have the power of shahwa, of desires, then we would not be able to sustain ourselves or sustain our generations. So the animals and the human beings share that. The angels do not. And the human being also shares akal with the angels, and that is why these faculties of the soul that Sheikh Naraki talks about, and it is not my subject, I'm just putting this out there for you to research further. I'm hoping that this is a thinking audience where we actually go back and think about and critically examine that you have the power of intelligence, which is the angelic power, which is the one that only the angels have it. You have the power of anger, the Khoei ghadabiyya, which is your ferocious power to protect yourself with the animals, and we have the power of desire, the Khoei shahawiyya, the animalistic Khoei that we have. And he adds one more. And he says this is the power of imagination, Khoei wahamiyya. No great painting would have been made without the Khoei wahamiyya, without the power of imagination. No invention could have taken place. And this is the blessing that the human being has. But I come back to the idea of choice that I talked about. That man, and when I say man here, I mean both genders, men and women. That man stands between two extreme points. Now, what are these extreme points? He can be lower than the lowest of the beasts, or he can be surpass the station of the angels. Why do I say that? An angel only has the power of akal. The angel is not dragged down by desire, by anger. It's the only one way to think, the only one way to be. And that's where the angel is. The angel has Khoei. The animals have the other two Khoei, Khoei ghadabiyya and Khoei shahawiyya. They don't have akal. When I say akal, I do not mean that the animals are not intelligent, but the idea of intellect is something different, it's something deeper. That they will not be able to reason on this, they will go with their instinct, which is what we call the animalistic instincts of the power of anger and the power of carnal desires, or the power of desires. And they will do what they need to do to sustain themselves, which is what we humans do. Now, why is it that a human being can go lower than the level of animals is? That despite possessing the power of intellect, if his animalistic tendencies take over and he goes in that direction of nafs ammara, then he's lower than the animals, because animals have not been given that fitra. I as a human being have been given. Why did I not lift myself? And therefore I'm lower than the station of the animals. But at the same time, if I allow my akal to rule supreme, if I allow my intellect to rule supreme and control my desires and control my anger through that, then I am at a station which is higher than the angels, because I was able to control this. This is the exaltation that we as humans have been given. My friends, that is the potential that we have to unlock, which is the title of this presentation. That we are able to unlock that potential through critical thinking. So, I'm talking about the intellect today, a faculty that we share with the angels. And now please stay with me just for a few more minutes, and inshallah we will finish. I'll talk about critical thinking. Thinking is a religious obligation, because we have been given akal, we have been given intellect. Not to do so is to betray one's fitrah. Not to do so is to betray what potential we have been given. I was in Toronto a few years ago, addressing a majlis like this, and I was talking about adl, I was talking about the justice of Allah. And a young man comes to me and says, tell me after the majlis, where will Mother Teresa go? To hell or to heaven? So I said, we are talking about critical thinking here. You have just heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is adil, He is just for what she has done. Do you think that Allah is going to be unjust to Mother Teresa? He said no. So I said, now leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is where she is going to go. Believe in the fact that Allah is just. That is a critical thinking that I need to do when I'm presented with a question like that. And I told him, worry about yourself to say, are you going to go to Jannah or are you going to go to Jahannam? That is your job, not to judge other people. But this is how critical thinking comes in. So therefore, if thinking is not an option, then how to think becomes important. It needs to be an important part of our effort. And thinking correctly has its ways. Yesterday I quoted Bahlul on one, and Bahlul is always amazing. He wakes everyone up. Me too. And Bahlul was approached by a great scholar called Junaid al-Baghdadi. Junaid is a great scholar, recognized scholar. He said, Bahlul, please, teach me something, because he knew the value of Bahlul. So Bahlul runs away in the forest saying, what can I teach you? You're a great scholar. Junaid goes after him. He said, no, Bahlul, please give me one tip, just one tip. Tell me what? Teach me something. So he said, do you know how to speak? And Junaid says, yes, I do. I speak with diction, I use proper grammar, I use the correct language, and he uses the whole essay on, how to speak. And Bahlul said, you don't know how to speak, you're not serving the Jannah. Junaid follows it. He said, Bahlul, tell me. He said, do you know how to eat? Now he's asking a great scholar to say, do you know how to eat? And to humor Bahlul, Junaid says, yes, I do. I make sure that the food that I eat is tahir, and that I have a proper etiquette, and that I eat with proper manners, and so on and so on. And then I say, Bismillah, as I said, manners is not just it's much people. Akhlaq is much deeper. He was describing all the akhlaq of knowing how to eat. Same thing. Bahlul runs away and says, you don't even know how to eat. So he follows Bahlul again. And finally Bahlul says, do you know how to sleep? And he said, yes. I make sure that, where I sleep is park and is tahir and so on and so forth, and gives another lecture as to the etiquette of sleeping. And Bahlul said, you don't even know how to sleep. And he runs away in the jungle. Finally, Junaid catches up with Bahlul. He said, Bahlul, please, my curiosity is killing me. I cannot bear this. Please, tell me. So he said, I asked you, do you know how to speak? And you gave me everything around speaking, except to say that, oh Junaid, when you speak the truth. That is a cardinal. Everything else is a corollary. Speak the truth. And he said, when I asked you, do you know how to eat? You gave me this whole essay on how to eat. I just wanted to hear from you one thing, to say that food that's going down my throat into my stomach, is that something halal? Is that something that I've acquired with the proper means, or is it husband? Is it somebody else's? That is the cardinal thing. And finally he said, when I asked you about sleeping, you gave me all this essay. The idea is that when you go to sleep, you go to sleep without any bugs, without any hatred in your heart for anybody. You will have a clean sleep. That is the meaning of knowing how to sleep. This is an example of critical thinking that we need to do. Sometimes we get so engrossed in rituals, we get so engrossed in methodologies that we fail to recognize the very essence of faith, and this is what critical thinking tells us. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the capacity to think, and it's a religious obligation to use our minds and to think correctly because He has given us the potential. And in the Quran we are told, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that God does not burden any soul save its own capacity. We have been given that capacity. We have been given aql. We have been given the power of anger. We have been given the power of shahwa so that we can procreate, so that we can protect ourselves. And we have also been additionally given the power of intelligence or the power of imagination. And therefore, we need to reach conclusions through our own intellectual struggle and not somebody else's. The idea is not to outsource one's aql to someone else. Allah has given me, He's given you, He has given every one of us the ability to think. He has given us the idea of intellect, and we cannot outsource our intellect to anyone. You know, when it comes to intellectual rigor, knowledge may have sciences, logic, philosophy, theology. You cannot learn any of these sciences or the philosophy by accepting this on the basis of somebody's authority because such and such philosopher said this. Yes, you can refer to the philosopher, you can refer to the scientist, but unless you understand, and then you cannot learn because so and so said. And this is discovered by asking the question why, how, and then once you get an answer, particularly I'm saying this to my young friends, because sometimes we get waylaid by different thoughts and different processes, particularly in this day and age, era of postmodernism, where nothing is fixed, nothing is constant, everything is relative. Even God is relative in the postmodern society. So if you were to take this, then you accept such answers, then you also question the answers that you get. This is the path. And it is for that reason that we are told that there is no taqleed in usul. We are taught that. In terms of the matters of faith, of usul al-din, the very basis of our creed, you cannot follow a mujtahid. You have to understand tawheed yourself. You have to understand adl yourself. And you have to understand nubuwwah, imamah, and qiyamah. The usul need to be understood. You cannot say that I believe in tawheed, or that I even believe in the existence of Allah because my teacher told me so, or the Maulana told me so, or my mujtahid told me so. This has got to be done by way of intellectual sciences. You cannot follow not even a mujtahid. Yes, you follow a mujtahid in what you practice, as to how you practice your prayers, how you give your khums, how you do these things in terms of furu. You have to follow an expert, a jurisprudence. But you cannot follow a mujtahid when it comes to the idea of usul. Why? Because all those sciences actually mean that you have to have tahqiq and not taqleed. Taqleed is a matter of furu, but when it comes to intellectual sciences, you cannot accept that 2 plus 2 is 4 on the basis of somebody else's opinion. You have to understand why 2 plus 2 makes 4. It is a different matter than when you go to an accountant, particularly if he's an accountant from where I come from Gujarat. You ask him, you say, what is 2 plus 2? He's going to ask you, how many do you want to make? I'll make it for you. This is postmodernism. This is that everything is relative. But when we talk about 2 plus 2 is equals 4, has got to be on the basis of your understanding and not somebody else's. You need to understand. So, in the same way, when it comes to the usul, when it comes to the very core of our faith, you cannot say, I believe in God because my mujtahid told me so. The salat that I'm performing does not mean that I understand the one that I'm praying to. Now, let there be no misunderstanding. It is only when you go through the rituals of prayer and that Allah will bless you, that moment when you realize that you're standing in front of your Maker and that particular event, the thing will come to you, is the power of prayer. That when you are in Salah, one day that realization will come to you and you will start understanding. In the meanwhile, you continue with the rituals that you have been given, because that is how a human being is supposed to understand. So, as somebody said, that the purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one. I say that again. The purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one. You don't fill your mind with just data. A computer can hold data. The idea is to have an open mind so that you are able to understand and go to the path of correct thinking. In the interest of time, I have so many stories to say. I will not do that, maybe some other time. But, when it comes to creative thinking, there are ways and means of being able to define correct thinking. Mullah Nasruddin was once asked to write a letter. This is thinking ahead, this is critical thinking. Nasruddin was asked to write a letter. And he said, I can't write the letter because I've got a bad leg. So the man says, but you will write a letter for me, right? He said, yeah, I know, but I've got a bad leg. So the man goes around in town and saying, well, I did not want to write a letter, just give me a false excuse, and what's a leg going to do with writing a letter? So a friend of Mullah's comes and says, I don't like people talking badly about me. Why could you just say no? Why do you want to give such a feeble excuse? So Mullah says, you don't know what I want. He wants to write a letter to send it to his brother in the next village. There's nobody in the next village who can read. So I know that they're going to call me to the next village to read the letter. But I have a bad leg, I can't walk, therefore there's no point in writing the letter. Idea is that you actually see through, look ahead. This is what critical thinking means. And I'll end, on this note, which is so philosophical, and our school of thought can stand up to any scrutiny. The school of the Ahlul Bayt is a school of logic. It is a school of critical thinking. It can stand up any scrutiny. There are many people who are confused on this idea to say that is mankind or is humankind free in their actions? Well, Imam Musa Kazim al-Islam did not just say yes and no. He takes a person who asks a question through this entire way of thinking. And I just want to demonstrate that there are so many examples in the school of Al-Bayt and Islam, where if you apply yourself, if you think about it, you will come through. So Imam says there are three possibilities. Is humankind free in their action? Think about it. He said, number one, that Allah is fully responsible for human actions. And there is a group that believes this, that Allah is responsible for all our actions. So he said there is one possibility, that Allah is fully responsible. Then the second possibility is that for any act, both the human being, insan, and Allah are partners in the responsibility of the actions. So it is done jointly by the human being as well as Allah. So the third one is that the human being is fully responsible for his or her actions. This is the question that Imam poses, and then he explains further. He says, if Allah was responsible, if Allah was the originator, then the punishment for those sins would be unjust. Because Allah did that, and there is a fiqh that believes that. That Allah is unjust, because if He is responsible for an action that I do, then how can He punish me? And if both are partners in that sin, then Imam said that is gross injustice. Because the weaker partner is now being punished for an action that was committed by two partners. And therefore Imam says that there is only one logical argument, that the human being acts according to his or her own will. This is a philosophy that baffled many. the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is so very clear in this. So, let's take it, just to end this. If Allah did something unjust, then knowingly, that would make him unjust, that he would be zalim, which he is not. If he did it unknowingly, then that would make him ignorant, jahil, which he is not. If he was forced to do it, that would make him reliant. But then he is not muhtaj. We get this from the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he is neither zalim, nor jahil, nor muhtaj. So, the question of doing something unjust does not arise. In that is a way that we do some critical thinking. Tomorrow, inshallah, we'll be talking about Qalb Salim for tranquility, and just to give us as to how exalted the human heart is, my friends. Hadith al-Qudsi teaches us that the heavens and the earth cannot contain me. Allah is saying the heavens and the earth cannot contain me. Nothing can contain me, but it is the heart of the mu'min that can hold. Beautiful thinking that we will talk about, inshallah, tomorrow. Tonight, we just remember a few words of Messiah. This is traditionally the 3rd of Muharram. We know that Imam left Medina, he goes to Makkah. The decision taken by him to go to Makkah was indeed a very strategic decision. He was able to at least pass the message in Makkah. He could have gone anywhere. He leaves before Hajj. Why? That people would know to say, why did the grandson of the Prophet leave before Hajj? There was no social media at that time. This was the biggest gathering that one could have. This was a strategic, a critical thinking move by Imam Hassan that he goes to Makkah. Time does not permit me to actually delve into this. But then on the way, he meets Hur. And Hur says, Ya Hussein, I implore you for the sake of Allah to save your life. I have no doubt that you will get killed if you proceed in this journey. And Imam says, do you seek to frighten me with death? Do you think if you kill me, that the matter will be resolved? Well, they move on, and when they arrive, we know that Imam Hussein, his kafala, was going to be deprived of the water. Today I just want to end this reflection with the arrival of Imam on Karbala, which was on the 3rd of Muharram. It is said that Imam did not want to initiate the fighting, he did not fight for the water. But when he arrives in this village, we all hear this every year, and it never ceases to give us an emotional drive to say, what was this state of mind of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and those who yet look at this presence of mind. And the Imam asked to say, what is the name of this village? And somebody says, it's Akar. Akar means movement. And Imam said, we seek refuge of Allah from destruction from Akar. And then says, does it have any other name? And somebody says, this is Shat al-Farah, the bank of the Euphrates. Again, Imam asked to say, is it known by any other name? And Zuhair ibn Aqil answered to say, yes, Mawla, it is called Karbala. And Imam said that, Ya Allah, we said to seek refuge from Karb and Bala, sorrow and tribulation. And then Imam embeds a spear into the sand beneath him, and he says, here is a place where our blood will flow, where our women will become captives, where our children will become orphans, and will be scattered all across the plains. And then we will be buried here, and from here we will be raised on the day of resurrection. Mu'min, just one incident that he was here, that Imam al-Islam buys the land from the local landowners for his burial. The sad part was that the soldiers of Yazid would not allow the men to be buried, so much so that they even dug up the grave of Baby Ali Asghar Where Imam Hussein had buried him in a shallow grave, this was a travesty of human calamities, and the world has never seen such an atrocity. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to be able to partake of the message of Karbala, to imbibe that message in our hearts, to use the faculty of critical thinking so that we can make the right choices and that we live our lives in the pleasure of our Maker, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا خير من خلق الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين، السلام عليك يا إمام المتقين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله حسين بن علي بشهيد كربلاء، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك وعلى أخيك بالفضل العباس وعلى أختك الحوراء زينب وعلى 9 المعصومين بذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر، السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي التقي الجواد، السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي النقي، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري، السلام عليك يا حجة بن الحسن يا قائم المرتضى المهدي يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كامة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليكم أهل البيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد